well, Mix is agnostic, so we're sector agnostic. We invest in a number of businesses, but obviously our focus is primarily on impact businesses, on businesses that will have a positive impact on society. But having said that, even within that space, right, there's a hierarchy. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because it relates to these three sectors. Well, firstly, so this idea of ICT, and technology and edutech. Well, 1.2 billion people in Africa, 640 million don't have electricity. 640 million people, over half the people living on this continent don't have electricity. So if you ask me, what do we need to invest in? It's clear. We need energy. We need, before we can even talk about iPads and sending kids home with iPads that they can't charge, we need to make sure that we secure the energy or situation and we alleviate that. And I was in a conference call today with the Deputy Finance Minister, and I was pleased to hear him mention that they're very much focused on alleviating the issues that Eskom is having. Whether it's South Africa or Nigeria, energy. So I think green energy is something that we're head over heels in love with. Secondly, food. Food is one of those ones where, again, it's all very well to send me to school, but if I'm hungry, I can't even concentrate. And we know you don't need to read a scientific journal. Like, if you're hungry, you're not going to concentrate. You're going to have headaches, pangs, malnutrition. I mean, the ramifications are far reaching. In fact, some of what we've been working on in modeling is exactly that, right? Like, so if you're a business that works with agriculture and food, you can do the mapping, and we sort of give you the breakdown. Like, okay, so if you invest in this is where he's providing the service, and these are the potential ramifications thereof. Then I think we can have a conversation about technology, because I think that has been the one thing that has allowed us, particularly in Africa, to leapfrog a number of nations, right? Whereas everybody else has had a linear progression in terms of how they've become integrated into this global community. And if you want a specific example, just think of those big brick cell phones that people had, and then the modems, and then the big desktops that sat at home. Africa jumped all of that. We went from nothing to smartphones. We went from web and then smartphones, and all of a sudden we're now having this Zoom conference calls, and we have, mobile data, and that has been the one thing that allows us to leapfrog into the space, right? And that the ramifications thereof is that we can get access to education without going to said institution that wants said investment. So a roundabout way of answering all these questions. So those would be my three sectors. But I think the order is important, and we shouldn't forget, right? It's not about, and again, you don't need to know Maslow's hierarchy to see this. It's a fundamental thing. Humans all over the world, hunger pangs are the same. Whether you're green, blue, black, or purple, you get hungry. You are concerned about your security. You are concerned about the well-being of your loved ones. And we should use that to unite us as a global community with united interests. And that should answer this question of where should foreigners invest? Invest in where your conscience lies. Invest in green energy. If you're an investor sitting in Sweden right now, there are a number of companies locally that are looking for finance to finance their local startup because they're thinking of a green energy project. That if that's something that resonates with you, that's where you should be investing your money. And in fact, on the Mix platform, we have a number of those. There's a conversation I was having with an individual. He's studying his master's, and he was here, I think he was from Frankfurt, and he was here studying our constitution. And you had a conversation, and he said to me, "Oh man, your constitution is so amazing. You guys are so progressive. We wish a lot of other countries were like this. That's why I'm here." And I said to him, "Oh, that's interesting. How do you think it's different?" And then he told me, the differences, and then he used the American Constitution, and then he gave an example of the South African Constitution. And I said to him, "Well, that's interesting because yeah, I could see why you would say that it's quite progressive. However, fundamentally, and this is also touching on what Tanda was saying earlier, fundamentally humans are the same. We have the same fears, we have the same concerns, and I would say our lack of or appreciation thereof is part of the problem. So we tend to want to swim against the tide. And I think the current US elections is a great example of that, which is my second example. So it baffles the mind that people still can't understand why a person like Trump would appeal to so many people. And it's quite simple. He appeals to their innate nature to want to survive. It is part and parcel of what we do. It is ingrained in our pre-brain that sits below our neocortex that makes us think this way. So all these primary instincts like fear, the need to reproduce, these are all things that have that sit within, quote unquote, our reptilian brain. And it is the lack of appreciation of this that is problematic, because it then says, we then try to smooth over the issues and say, oh, well, let's talk. The fact of the matter is we do have differences in opinions, and we can see things differently because we were trying to solve what we perceive as totally different problems. What we need to do is to find the intersection between those problems. So you're worried about climate change? Well, I'm worried about food. So how do I get my food and also make sure that your climate change issue is resolved, right? That is where the nexus needs to occur. And it is when we don't do that, we find ourselves pitted against someone who's trying to get food on the table versus someone who's trying to save the planet. I think it was the CEO of the African Wildlife Federation who said it. He said, listen, I'm trying to talk to these guys in Kenya about climate change and what we need to do. But the guy's pushing his wheelbarrow, like, listen, man, I have to go to work. I have to get some food. And so that's why being contextually relevant is important. So it is our need to not overcomplicate the issue and to understand the fundamentals of how we as human beings interact with one another, how these problems intersect, and how your problem can indeed be something which you should have an interest in, even though that is not immediately apparent. It could be a third, fourth order situation. That is what is the complexity in building what mixes, right? Which is the impact. So how do you measure the impact? So how do you distill, occurrences that would have happened versus occurrences that are occurring because you took a specific action? That's where the rubber meets the road. And so those are my closing remarks. I think everyone, has said really interesting questions. I see Monde has asked a question about intersectional collaboration. Exactly. If you're an investor in the US looking to fund your pension fund because you're underfunded by 6%, go find a business in a developing world and invest in that. Get your 24% back, pay the insurance in the currency exchange protection, and get your 12%. What you've done is you've done some good, you've met your liabilities, and you're doing what you set out to do, and the other person has done what you want them to do, which is fall in line with your global standards. So it's exactly that. So that's why I'm going to park it.